106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. This is your very own Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum for Salam Radio 106.2 FM. It's an absolute delight to be back again to talk to you about what matters. And what matters is what's happening in the here and now. My name is Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum. I am a GP who works in the centre of Peterborough at a very busy practice. And I absolutely love bringing to you these shows that talk about things that matter to our communities, where we can talk about things that are more prevalent to do with the world of health, how you're coping with that, if it affects you in any way, and how we together can talk a little bit about how to address things, give you a bit of background knowledge about them, and also figure out a way to move forward. How do you need to address such matters? Do you have a deficiency in knowledge about this? And we also do include in that some taboo subjects that are not quite controversial, but not really spoken about as well. So it's really important that we talk about things that matter to us and our communities. So I rack my brains every single week. I do repeat some topics as the months and days go on. But I also think about the things that people present to me when I'm in surgery, for example. And I try to bring those things up. So I was thinking that we see so much in the news about negative things that are happening the world over, and actually in our own country here as well. And a lot of it is related to well-being, quality of life. And it's fascinating, actually, the whole subject of health and well-being actually tying in with every facet of society. So if you're looking at economies, thriving economies are full of people who are well, who are thriving at work, who are actually able to provide for their children and families, whereas people who have poorer health will have limited ability to earn an income for their families, and therefore they don't thrive as well. And if people aren't working within a city or within a population or within a community, you will see poorer economic growth and outcomes. Likewise, for example, the sector of housing. And the reason why I'm talking about this is I'm actually a elected representative in the city, and we don't talk politics on this show, which is a good thing, but it's really important. I've been thinking for a while now to tie in the whole facet of how good health should actually be tying in with every single sector of what local authorities and local governments do to ensure that they have a population that is thriving, that grows, that the economy then becomes better on the back of a population of healthy people, and aspects like housing as well. So the good quality housing will always make for better health outcomes. So if you have a better insulated home, you will know for sure that your children will feel warm, they won't suffer from as many respiratory disorders, the likelihood of damp affecting their airways is minimal. And I think that these facets are really important for us all to understand. And part of these shows are to foster a sense of communication to our communities to help you better understand how local governments work. But in line with this show and in relevance to this show, I feel that it's a duty to educate people and to talk to them a little bit more about these health outcomes. So let's start talking about this show. And what I am going to do on this show is to talk a little bit about malnutrition. You wouldn't think in the United Kingdom that children are malnourished or people are malnourished, when in fact they are. People can be malnourished. So it's really important that we look at the reasons for children becoming malnourished and why people become malnourished. And one of the other things that I see a lot within my surgery is the aspect of fussy eating in children. So I think it's just pertinent that we talk a little bit about it. So without further ado, I am going to ask you to watch the live video on Facebook, YouTube, X, or Twitch. And I'd also like you to call in and have a conversation with me. What do you do for your fussy eating children? I'd like to know, how do you approach food with your children? It's huge. I see so many people nowadays who are giving tablets, phones, smartphones to their children, showing them videos on YouTube so that they can just eat. Food shouldn't have to be a chore. Meal times have so many other benefits. They bring families together. It should be a part of engaging with your children and a time for them to talk about themselves, to foster a sense of dialogue. Whilst they foster that sense of dialogue, they develop their social skills. It is so important that we understand not just the concept of healthy eating, but the importance of all the other skills that go around enjoying food and appreciating a well-balanced diet and sharing that happiness with the family at the table as well. So if you're up for listening to that, which I'm sure you will be, then drop me a message in the chat on Facebook Live, which is where the majority of comments do come, or call me on 01733602133, or you can text me on the WhatsApp number of 074 11191062. So let's talk a little bit about malnutrition first. It is a serious condition, and it happens when your diet doesn't contain the right amount of nutrients, and it can mean poor nutrition, and it can refer to undernutrition, in which the person is not getting enough nutrients, where your eating habits are not right. You might be getting the right amount of calories, but it's not with the right amount of foods. Or you can have overnutrition, which means getting more nutrients than needed. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about in the first half an hour is about malnutrition in both adults and children. It's important that we do that because malnutrition can mean you are overeating the wrong kinds of food, which can lead to obesity, which is also, believe it or not, malnutrition too. So we've got to open our minds about the possibility of the health effects that malnutrition can have on us. And even if it's obesity, we really do need to think about our habits and what we're feeding our bodies. And honestly, I cannot tell you from an energy point of view as well, in sort of in person, how you can benefit from having the right type of diet and how that actually makes you feel. It makes a world of a difference. So I'm hoping that by the end of this show, you are able to incorporate the right kind of habits, or you take some motivation away to have the right kinds of food so that you can live a more meaningful and healthy life. Let's just put it that way. Now, your signs and symptoms of malnutrition. You can either have an unintentional weight loss. Now, in an unintentional weight loss, you're actually losing 5 to 10% or more of weight over 3 to 6 months, which is one of the main signs of your malnutrition. And a low body weight, we usually go by something which is known as a body mass index calculation, which is a calculation based on your weight in kilograms and your height in centimeters. And a low body weight, or your BMI, is anybody that has a BMI of 18.5 and below. Malnutrition signs are those that lose an interest in eating and drinking, or feeling tired all the time, feeling weak, getting ill often, and taking a long time to recover. In children, not growing or not putting on weight at the expected rate can also take place, which leads to what we deem to be malnutrition. Okay, so when we talk about the signs, it's important that we talk about the symptoms as well. So you can be losing weight, but it's possible to be a healthy weight and overweight and still be deemed to be malnourished. Now, you could be malnourished if, like I said before, you lose around 5 to 10% of your body weight within 3 to 6 months, or if your BMI or your body mass index is under 18.5. But if you have a BMI under 20, you could also be deemed to be at risk too. So if you find that your clothes, your belts, jewelry seem to be becoming looser over time, that could be an indication that you're actually losing weight. So it might be a good idea to weigh yourself. And if you have been losing weight unintentionally without even trying over a period of 3 to 6 months, it's a good idea to go and see your GP. And if a friend or family you observe may have lost weight over a period of time and you have concerns, just encourage them to get help. Now, the other types of malnutrition include, or the symptoms of that include, a loss of appetite, a lack of interest in food and drink, feeling tired, generally tired all the time, feeling weaker in yourself, not having the strength to do things, sleeping a lot more, not being able to get out of bed and complete the chores that you're supposed to complete, getting ill often, and taking a long time to recover from illnesses. I've seen so many patients this week who have just said that they got a flu-like illness over winter. Well, it's still winter, but over December and over Christmas, and they still don't feel fully recovered. And they've been losing weight. And in those instances, you do have to investigate such patients to see what the cause could be. Also, if you've got wounds that are taking a long time to heal, that could also be a trigger factor for somebody who could be malnourished too. If you feel that you're not able to focus as much as you used to be able to, that could be a trigger factor. And feeling cold most of the time. Now, if you have any of the symptoms that I've just spoken about, do go and see your GP. It's very important. And if you notice these signs and symptoms in someone else, just encourage them to get help. Honestly, there's no harm in saying to somebody, oh, it looks as if you've lost quite a bit of weight. Are you exercising, or are you actually, did you notice that your clothes look a little bit more looser than they did? And is this something that you're intending, or are you, undergoing a regimen of exercise or something to lose weight? And if they say no, it might be a good idea for them to sort of explore things further, especially if they're elderly and living on their own, because often a lot of elderly people who live on their own don't get the right amount of nutrients because they're not eating properly. And they're not eating properly because they might not have the strength to make their meals. And if they don't have the strength to meet their meals, then they lose weight even more. And it turns into a vicious cycle whereby they're not getting those nutrients. They're becoming weaker over time, losing weight, losing the strength to do so, losing motivation, and lacking that get up and go. So it's very important that we encourage such people to see a GP. And in the way of having poor mental health as well can also make people eat less, and that can also lead to malnourishment. In fact, not eating very little is one of the cardinal signs of poor mental health and well-being. And the other facet is obviously overeating, but not eating at all can also lead to a loss of weight and to have malnutrition. Now, that's what you see in adults. In children, it's fairly different. So in children, and it's called failure to thrive in children, actually, and this is the reason why I wanted to talk about it, that any child that's not putting on weight or growing at the expected rate can also be malnourished. You might see changes in a child's behaviour, such as being duly irritable, slow, or even anxious. Such children who are malnourished will often have low energy levels and actually tiring more than other children. And it's very important, therefore, to have your children's milestones checked at their regular checkups. And a lot of people think that children or even babies, when they have their immunisations at the 3, 4 and 6 month mark, it's because they're just there for an immunisation. And that's not the case, actually. It is to check for their milestones. So any child that has the 8-week examination is being examined to see if they are meeting, number one, their milestones, and to see whether they have gained weight or not. So it's very important that we adhere to those basic examinations, although, yes, we advocate immunisations because there are some very deadly diseases that the childhood immunisations confer protection towards and for, but it's also very important that children have their examinations. So let's just keep that in mind. I think it's important that we keep that in mind. Now, there are health conditions that can also lead to malnutrition. So long-term conditions such as having nausea, feeling sick, preventing you from having an appetite and thus having oral intake. You could have diarrhea and vomiting. You see so many people who have the norovirus, which is an acute illness, that will have diarrhea and vomiting, and people will naturally lose weight because they're unable to have anything by mouth as well. And cancer and liver disease can also cause a decrease oral intake that can lead to malnutrition. And the liver is the powerhouse of the body, so it breaks down cholesterol. It's also responsible because it oversees a lot of the metabolic reactions that take place in the body, including digestion of food. And that is why it's important to have your liver functioning properly if you want to avoid malnutrition. And some of the lung conditions like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease can also lead to malnutrition because you are working so hard just to breathe that you invariably have a decreased oral intake. So chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is also one of them. And as I said before, depression, even schizophrenia, can affect your mood and desire to eat. And that is why if you have a loved one that suffers from schizophrenia, they may have a medication that can actually see them put weight on. So that could be something that needs to be addressed as well. Now, conditions that disrupt the ability for somebody to digest food or absorb nutrients, such as Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, I broadcasted a show on ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, and we have seen that Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis is quite responsible for a whole host of deficiencies, including anemia, because there is bleeding within the gut, and that can also cause poor oral intake and malnutrition, and also a loss of weight too. As I referred to, the elderly and frail, in line with that, I'd also like to draw your attention to those people who suffer from dementia, because they can forget to eat and neglect their well-being. And last but not least, one of the other health conditions that I think is really pertinent, that is more prevalent within teenagers, more so teenage girls, is anorexia nervosa, in which eating is an actually psychological disorder related to body image a lot of the time, and prevents these patients from taking an adequate oral intake, and they can lose heaps of weight and become severely malnourished, to the extent that if it happens in teenage girls, it can shut down their reproductive system and they can stop having periods in a menstrual cycle. So that's how important it is to emphasize on the dangers of malnutrition. It's not just a deficiency of nutrients, but there's a whole host of other problems that can happen associated with other illnesses too. And there are medications that can cause malnutrition too. So those types of medications that have a side effect of nausea, losing the appetite, or having diarrhea can make you mean that you either absorb nutrients lesser, or you are unable to eat as much because you're feeling sick all the time. And that's the case with medications such as chemotherapeutic drugs and medications that are like antibiotics that can make you feel sick and decrease your oral intake or give you diarrhea too. There are physical and social factors that can cause malnutrition as well, such as teeth that are in poor condition that can make eating difficult and painful, so you can't eat anything that's a bit more of a tougher texture, like meat or protein-based foods like chicken or eggs, for example. And having a physical disability that can cause impairment and makes it difficult to move around, cook or shop for food. And living alone or being socially isolated. Having limited knowledge about nutrition or cooking, and if you have alcohol or drug dependency, or even a low income or poverty, that can also cause malnutrition. And I've spoken about it at the beginning of the show. And that is why I'm so passionate to see good health in every facet of public society, whether it's to do with our local economy, whether it's to do with people having a good sense of well-being when they're in the workplace, whether it's about children who are living above or below the poverty line or attending breakfast clubs just so that their tummies can be filled. These are really important factors for us to consider, not only within ourselves, but obviously within larger society. And it's not just incumbent upon us, but also those people who hold positions of responsibility. And I think the responsibility lies with them to a greater degree to ensure that our children have the best quality of life and the best start in life. There are lots of projects across Peterborough that are looking into it. And one of them is actually named the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, which I'd like to signpost all of you to. It can be found on the Peterborough City Council website. Have a look. It's got some wonderful data on how we as a city can give our children the best start in life. So really important that we talk about it too. Now, in the UK, malnutrition in children is often caused by long-term health conditions or even by fussy eating. In the second half of the show, I am going to concentrate on fussy eating and what you can do about it. But the causes then lead to, obviously, a lack of appetite. In children, their digestive systems can react very quickly, so it causes a lack of digestion and can disrupt that. And also the increase in the body's demand for energy. But there are other medical issues such as congenital heart disease, cystic fibrosis, and even cerebral palsy, which can lead to decreased oral intake in these children. And it's rare in the UK for children to have malnutrition that's caused by a poor diet, but it can also happen if children are neglected, living in poverty, or even being abused. And that is why I thought that this was a really good show and topic to talk about, whilst I had the previous two shows about safeguarding, adult and child safeguarding, and what we need to do and what our responsibilities are. So this sort of ties in with that. But also I see an awful lot of patients who have malnutrition, and the vast majority of them are children who are malnourished, but the number of children who are malnourished as a result of fussy eating is on the increase. And that's something I really do need to talk about in this show. So if you've got a child who is a fussy eater and it isn't amenable to any type of coercing, whether it's on internet technology, tablets, the phone, then you need to listen to this show. And we are going to be coming to a break shortly, but this is Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum. You're joining me on Salam Radio here on the Body, Health and Mind show. It's a wonderful show, very cold, blustery day out there, but I'd appreciate your input. So text me on 07411 191062, or you can call us on 01733 602 133, and in turn, comment and give me a few of your experiences. If you've ever had children who are fussy eaters, what have you done to try and overcome their habits of fussy eating? And do you give your children technology to have a look whilst they're eating, whilst you're feeding them? Do you have small children or babies that you're weaning and you feel that technology is the best way to try and deflect from their attention? I really want to know. So do let me know, and do join me after the break.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Craving top quality fried and grilled chicken without the high price tag? At Sam's, we make every bite unforgettable. From juicy chicken to mouth-watering burgers, taste why we're the best in town. Visit us at our brand new restaurant at 33 Westgate in the city centre, or our second spot on Lincoln Road. Prefer delivery? We're on Just Eat, Uber Eats and Deliveroo. Sam's, serving up amazing chicken across the UK for over 30 years.
2020 World Buffet is inspired by the best foods from around the world. See our teppanyaki chefs grill your food to order, or choose delicious Indian, Italian, Chinese, Mexican dishes and British favourites, all halal. 2020 World Buffet offers you unlimited food at a set price. Open 7 days for lunch and dinner. Catering, wedding and party services available too. Call 01733 566 320 or visit 2020buffet.co.uk. 2020 World Buffet, 35 New Road, Peterborough, PE1 1FJ.
Where can you get high quality and low prices? Amar Food Store and Halal Meat in Lincoln Road, Triangle is the place to go. Pay us a visit and take advantage of our special offers and great range of products on groceries, vegetables, fruits and halal meat. Also send money to Pakistan absolutely free. We have all top brands at special offers, offer free customer parking and provide a free local delivery service. Amar Food Store and Halal Meat, 613B Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call us on 01733 687 374. High in quality, low in prices.
Satisfy your cravings at Ibrahimi Buffet Restaurant. Enjoy a tantalising variety of Chinese, Italian, Pakistani and comfort food favourites, from starters to desserts. Kids under 5 dine for free, so bring the whole family to our restaurant at 63 Sycamore Avenue. Open every day from 5pm to 10:30pm. Call us on 01733 313131 or book online to reserve your table. Ibrahimi-restaurant.co.uk. Every bite is a delight at Ibrahimi Buffet Restaurant.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices, or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
Craving authentic Desi flavors? Look no further than Desi Restaurant. From midday until 1 in the morning, enjoy our homemade specialties that will transport your taste buds. Indulge in tantalizing papri chaat and savor the rich Chersi Kadahi. Treat your friends to our fresh 1 kilogram Chersi lamb handi. Plus, get 2 12-inch pizzas for $11.95. Located at 298 Lincoln Road, we deliver from lunchtime until 1 a.m. Call 01733 555 795 now to order and experience Desi Restaurant's flavors.
listening to Peterborough's community radio, Salam Radio. Salam Radio. 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. Good evening to all of you. I'm really enjoying this show actually, but I'd like a little bit more interaction. So I'd be grateful if you could interact with me on the show, in the Facebook chat. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing, or if you've got problems with your children in terms of fussy eating. How do you think it started? And this show is about malnutrition. At the beginning of this show, I spoke about why I think we need to talk about certain topics. I'm an elected representative. We don't do politics at all on this radio station. We don't. Just to be clear. However, I've noticed that there are some matters that do need to be discussed because they have a relevance around our society in general. And one of them is, yes, we're seeing an increasing cost of living crisis. Yes, we are seeing a lot more poverty in our communities. Yes, we are seeing a state of poor health with longer waiting lists, difficulty with accessing a GP, and wider socioeconomic disparities within certain groups and communities and neighbourhoods, which then leads to poorer health outcomes, malnutrition, people not having the best jobs that they could. And as a result, we have to understand or unpick the factors that bring about malnutrition. But that was what I talked about in the first half of the show. I'm Dr. Shabina Sadkiyoum. I'm your radio show host on the Body, Health and Mind show today. I am a GP who works in a busy inner city practice. I love my job as a GP. I love talking to people. I start my clinics an hour earlier than what I should, but I do so because I have the time to talk to people. And it's a wonderful job. If you put your heart and soul and your mind to it, it's very rewarding indeed. So in the first half of the show, I spoke about malnutrition and the factors that are associated with that. Long-term health conditions, for example, or children that are fussy eaters. And I said that it's a huge issue that I'm seeing right now in children who are fussy eaters. And as a result of their fussy eating, they are not meeting the milestones for being able to gain weight at all. So let's talk about fussy eating. Let's talk about those little fussy eaters, shall we? How does this all come about? Now, it's an area that, after being a mum of 4 children, and no 5 fingers are the same in any hand, you may realise, or some of you may not, but for those of you who do realise that your children will be different as well. They'll have different preferences, and in some cases there are children who will be fussy eaters, and as a first-time mum, nobody gives you a manual to tell you how to do it best. So I'm not being harsh on any parent here, but sometimes because of the fast pace of life and because parenthood can be challenging, we sometimes fall into bad habits around feeding our children. And this is the show to talk about it on, so I thought we'll talk about it. Now, with fussy eaters, it's a very slow but challenging process. And the key is to start off very slowly with your child and put into practice 1 or 2 strategies that will help with your child. And make it a part of an everyday routine so that it becomes normal for all of you. You know, making sure that your child eats on time, making sure that your lunch, dinner time, or tea time, as people like to call it, are set. Try to take out unhealthy snacks in the diet. So these are just some of the things that I will be talking about. And if there is a bit of progress, celebrate it. Because children are like sponges. They will absorb any information that we give them. And if they don't, at some point they will give in to the information that we give them, start to become accepting of it. So remember to celebrate their progresses, whether they're big or small. Celebrate every progress equally. That's irrespective of any child that happens to be on the autistic spectrum or isn't on the spectrum at all. And whilst we're talking on the subject of that, I say that strategically. I don't like to call children on the autistic spectrum as having a disability or that they're unable. They're just special children who need to have a special approach. So many children who are on the autistic spectrum display fussy eating habits because they have a hypersensitivity towards certain textures. But that's them and their special characteristic around how they function. So it's important to just be aware of that. And I'm sure that many who are listening to this would agree as well. I think we tend to use labels a lot for children. And if we work with them rather than impose, then the outcomes are a lot better. And then you have happy parents and happy children. So I'm going to start off with that positive note. So why is it that children avoid new foods? Where does this whole fussy eating fad come from? It's simply because a lot of children just don't like tasting new and unfamiliar foods that they've never seen before. I mean, try putting a sprig of broccoli in front of a child who's small, okay? They will look at that and feel horrified. For those that are fussy eaters, that there's somewhat doesn't look very appealing, green and very furry on the outside, very tree-like, and it's broccoli that often doesn't do it for children. But for many children, there are those that take quite nicely to broccoli. But broccoli is one of the real, I think, foods that children don't take very nicely to. And it's actually, when a child doesn't take nicely to a food, it's actually called food neophobia. It's part of normal development, actually, and many children go through food neophobia phase because it can start soon after a child's first birthday and can continue until school age, which is why there are lots of children that end up going into school who eat very little when they first start because they have severe food neophobia. And it's because children don't like to touch foods that look different. And that could be because of the food's colour, shape, texture that they aren't familiar with. And often you'll see children, if you put a vegetable in front of them or something, they'll look at it. Some of them might point at it, might touch it just to see how it's feeling, because that's their curiosity. Those are their little minds developing and being inquisitive as to what this strange thing is. It's quite fascinating watch children explore food and how they take to it as well. But there are some children who are quite sensitive to certain sensations, such as the smell of food and the taste of food. And it might mean that they don't want to touch certain food textures with their hands. And some children also might have a negative association with feeding. And those children are those that have spent a long time in hospital as babies, or those that have suffered from conditions such as reflux, or those babies who have allergies, or children that have allergies, or have been fed by a tube for a period of time. So let's not forget those children as well. And they may then associate eating with pain, that it's going down the same way that I had that tube down my throat. And also that whilst they were being artificially fed, they also had discomfort or an adverse reaction, even if they've had an allergy or reflux. The whole system of digestion is very much linked with the mind. And it is very interesting when you think about this more closely as to how children perceive food. So have a thought about that. If your child fits in one of those categories where it's had reflux for a time, it may psychologically associate food with pain or discomfort, and that's why it tends to be a fussy eater. Now, when you do in such children introduce solid food, the window of opportunity becomes delayed, or it's not there because it's missed. And during the first year of life, in a child that has any of these issues, if you don't introduce those foods, or if that opportunity is missed, that can actually be the cause for later food avoidance as well. But largely, children become gradually better at trying foods as they get older. And I'll give you an example, actually. This was quite amusing. I have a lovely, lovely friend who says to me that she can't eat eggs at all. I love a boiled egg in the morning. I'm not going to say that I don't. I do. You know, there's nothing like a half-boiled egg and soldiers, toast soldiers. I think that it's great. Oh, yummy. You know, that's probably my favourite breakfast. So I've, revealed that. And a protein shake, but that's something too healthy. But I like to have a protein shake in the morning. But I do love a boiled egg and toast soldiers. And I do think that, so my friend, she hates eggs. And she says there's something about the smell. I've never had them. I feel sick when I'm around eggs. I don't like them. And she said that that's been the case with her since she was a little girl, since she was a child. So it's very interesting how this neophobia of eggs has grown with her, and she's still not amenable to it. So I find that very interesting. Now, let's talk a little bit about the solutions. We've spoken throughout this program about problems, and you must be thinking, well, Dr. Shabina, we don't want to be able to listen to your show if you're not going to give us the solution. So it's important that we give the solution. So let's talk a little bit about the solutions. Introduce any new food to your child slowly. It takes a while for a child to accept new food. And it takes up to, believe it or not, 14 to 20 times for a new food to be accepted by a child. Keep offering it. Don't give up until you have offered it at least 20 times. And it could be helpful for you to keep a record of the food that you've offered as well, if you've got a fussy eater. So that's the first strategy. Don't give up. Be patient. I cannot stress enough. Please be patient, because that child will accept that food at some point. And remember the number 14 to 20. So that's the golden nugget of information I want you to take away today. 14 to 20 times on average. Don't rush into the process, is the bottom line here. Now, you can try to offer one food at a time and offer a small portion, such as 1 carrot stick or a quarter of an apple. Please supervise your children. You don't want them to choke on little bits of food or pieces. And a large portion of food might put your child off trying anything. So just give them a little bit, a little piece. And even if they have one bite and put it to the side, but you see them chewing away, honestly, that is progress. New foods should always be offered on a separate plate, away from accepted foods. And dividing plates up are a great strategy for this as well. Also, there are a great way of your child trying a new food is getting them involved, if they're old enough that is getting them involved in the process. So they could choose their own food, they could prepare it with you, and that can then encourage their interest. And actually working for your food, preparing it and cooking it, really does make some children very hungry. And I've seen many children who've been involved in the process and are quite impatient when that food is made. But this is mine when you reach success. Let them see different foods in different environments, such as in the kitchen, at meal times, at nursery, at school, and even in the shops. It's great when you take a child and they have their own little shopping list and they tick off the fruits that they want to buy. So you say to them, what fruit would you like to eat today? And sometimes they'll say, no. We'll say, okay, shall we choose together? And they could give you the name of the fruit and you can say to them, you don't have to eat it. I just want you to choose it with me. And when they choose it and you pay for it, you could say, oh, do you think we could try this now, seeing that you've chosen it? Give them complete ownership over it. And I know that this might sound a little bit controversial because obviously, you know, people talk about food wastage, etc. But your child can explore food through play as well. So different colour foods, asking them to place the food and draw a particular coloured circle and asking them to match that food colour with that circle. So you could have a green circle and you could have an orange circle and you could have a red circle and cut up tomatoes, cucumber and carrots and ask them to place it next to the circle and say whoever puts it there first, they're going to eat it first. These are all the tricks that I've tried with my children, by the way. And yes, they have been successful and unsuccessful in varying degrees, but it works, and it's worked for me as well. Try and get creative with your food. There's lots of great ways to introduce your child to the idea of new foods. You could do some activities to help your child learn more about food, such as growing vegetables, cooking with new and different food, and reading and singing about new foods as well. I've never done the singing thing, but if you think that it works for you, honestly, try it. Now, the next stage would then be expanding on their range of food. So I've got Peterborough drivers who have just messaged me. Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. It's lovely to have you. Always lovely to see you as well in person. Thank you very much, Peterborough drivers, for joining our show and wanting to take some inspiration on learning about good health. And we are talking about malnutrition in society and also in adults and children. And today, in the second half of the show, we've been talking about fussy eating in children. So I hope you're enjoying the show. And if you've just tuned in, my name is Dr. Shabina Asad Qiyum. I'm the presenter for the Body, Health and Mind show on Salam Radio 106.2 FM. And if you want to join in the conversation, just like Peterborough Drivers has, then you can comment on the live stream on Facebook, or you can WhatsApp us on 07411 191062. So get involved in the conversation. Now, change your food shape by using food cutters once your child has accepted a food. Okay? Now, when your child has accepted a food, it's not about changing that food completely. Build up gradually. So you could change the food shape by using food cutters. You could change the colour of the food with food colouring, although that's something I'm not particularly keen on because food colouring obviously has little artificial substances in it, but it has come from the dietitian, a lot of the information that I've taken and substantiated. You could change the taste slightly by adding a small amount of something like syrup or a little bit of herb, and you could change the texture from mashed up foods to soft finger foods. For example, moving from mashed potato to a piece of boiled potato. So that's how you're actually transitioning the same item of food into something that's a little bit more edible. And trying different brands or new flavours of preferred food as well. Now, if they don't like it and they spit it out, let them do it. Okay, offer it again. Remember the 40 to 20 rule. You can offer a child food up to 40 to 20 times. So then I'm going to talk a little bit about your positive meal environments. And children naturally love to copy. How many times has your child looked at you if you're applying makeup, if you're putting cream on your face? They love that kind of thing. why can't we make it interesting for them when we are making food? We can get them involved. We can show them the work that we do. We can roll out bread, roll out dough with their help. You can make cookies with their help, although I will be wary of saying that it's not a good idea for children to have a high level or content of sugar in their food. But it's very important that we get our children involved in the activities, especially when they like all the other activities that we do. So that's very important too. Make a good environment. Try to eat together so that they can see you and the rest of the family eating a variety of foods. And I'm going to share with you a story. My eldest daughter, who's now 19, was the most fussiest eater. And bless my mum. My mum really helped me raise my daughter alongside when my husband and I were working. And my mum would do everything she could to try and make my daughter eat. So she'd sit her down and there would be pigeons outside on the windowsill, and my mum would try to deflect her attention towards the pigeon so that when she'd open her mouth because she was so distracted, she'd put the spoon near her mouth, open her mouth because she was so distracted with the pigeon. But it took so much effort, and often it'd take over an hour for her to be fed. And what we started to do was to sit her down with us when we were having our adult meals, and we were having a very traditional Asian meal of chicken curry with chapati. And she smelt that food and she looked at what we were eating and she started waving her hands around desperately because she wanted to try it. My husband said that we should give it to her, and we did. And we never looked back. At a very young age, she started eating things that were unlike what children would eat at her age. Things like smoked salmon and cream cheese sandwiches, which is a very, very acquired taste in a young child. She would love things like that, and she'd go for broccoli and she'd have chicken curry and dal. And my mum often says to me that you have grown your children up on dal, because my children are all very tall, and I would actually prefer to make fresh meals at home. And that's the other thing, that we are now having a society whereby we are relying too much on fast food outlets. I see many parents say, oh yes, once a week we have a takeout. I don't like getting food once a week from a takeaway or a pizza shop, simply because I consider that one meal a day, with our busy lifestyles, with so many of us working, is important to sit down with the family. It's not always possible, but as much as you can during the week, that is the right environment for a small child to see that a family meal is the time when family comes together and speaks to each other. So just hold that thought and think about it. Have you got the right environment for your child, or is your child eating in isolation where you're feeding them and then you sit down as a family and eat? I would say it's probably about time you started looking at how everyone eats, and give that little child their own status at the dinner table, as it were. Sit them at the head of the table so that they know that they're the most important if they're a fussy eater. Give it a try. There's no harm in trying. And if it doesn't work, there are other strategies to follow as well. Establish a routine. Prepare for the meal. Wash their hands. Prepare food. Help set the table with them. They may foster a sense of the fact that they feel validated in getting ready for their meal. And during meal times, if they find it hard to use cutlery, let them eat with their hands, because the added stress of using cutlery can put them off their food. Please don't use any type of technological device to divert their attention. It is not right to do so, okay? Now, have a calm and comfortable environment during meal times. It's very important. And most of all, if your child eats, please do praise and reward them. You can use a sticker chart. You can use stamps. Let them do it. Let them stamp on it. So there are lots of things that you can do in order to help improve with your child who is a fussy eater too. And there are other things such as using food art, jewellery making with Cheerios, such as with Cheerios or pasta shells, playing outside with sand or mud. That will make them accustomed to textures. So it's wonderful to have hosted this show with you. Hopefully I will be back with another show. But until then, thank you very much for joining, and